Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and we have a huge update for patch 9.1.5. We've finally got a blue post. As of making this video, the PTR is not live yet, but by the time this video is released, it's a good chance that you might want to check Battle.net in case PTR is up. We got a lot of quality of life stuff as expected. We got a lot of changes for classes, not particularly spec nerfs and buffs, but rather overwhelmingly massive update for many of us, having to do particularly with the AoE cap that was added at the beginning of Shadowlands. A very unpopular decision, but Blizzard stuck with it, and it looks like they're finally making some changes now. So let's take a look at everything that we have so far in the massive blue post, and hopefully PTR should be available at some point this week in order for us to test a variety of these changes, because a lot of these updates really do sound good. Starting the blue post off, they start off with the allied races and the customization changes that we're getting for Nightborn, Lightforged, Void Elves, as well as the ability for players to unlock Culturans, Mechanomes, and Dark Iron Dwarves a little bit easier. Continued on with more customizations and aesthetics. They even added a art update, added weather effects in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Come to think of it, I think Stormwind is always sunny and always clear skies, and Orgrimmar is always like this dusty but also clear skies as well. But it'd be kind of cool to add rain. Imagine being inside of the Orgrimmar auction house while you listen to the pitter-patter of the rain outside. I think that'd be kind of cool and in some case soothing. That's a very minor change, but I honestly appreciate the quality addition to our capital cities. But of course, I'm not going to make you guys wait too long for the big news. AoE caps are getting changed. Right in the blue post, it reads, with the launch of Shadowlands, we reduced the maximum number of targets that several abilities could hit, specifically to address a few gameplay problems related to pulling a large number of enemies in dungeons. Players often refer to these changes as the AoE target cap. Our intention was to reduce the effectiveness of burst AoE buttons against large target counts, i.e. 15 to 20 enemies, while also increasing the effectiveness against fewer targets, e.g. 3 to 5 enemies, and then communicating that strength clearly in the tooltips. The abilities that remained uncapped were generally ones that offered lower damage over a long period of time, like Blizzard or Consecration. Along with other changes, we set out to move away from pull as many mobs as possible and use all our cooldowns and delete them, and a predominant strategy across various forms of content. We've received a lot of feedback that these abilities were not hitting enemies in their range in any way, creates a feel problem for World of Warcraft combat, but also an issue for trivial encounters like farming legacy content. For many of the abilities that underwent the change from uncapped to a strict target cap in 9.0, we're converting the damage to reduced damage beyond 5 targets, which means that when you hit more than 5 targets that your ability is capped for, the more enemies it hits, technically the ability does more damage, but the more targets it hits, that damage is further reduced. So you can still have your damage uncapped and target and hit affect every single enemy in front of you. However, that damage will be heavily reduced past the maximum number. As for the abilities that are getting this treatment, it's going to be Death Knight, Sacrificial Pact, A-Bomb Limb, Reanimated Shambler Lego that not a lot of people use, Bone Storm and Consumption for Blood, Frost Scythe for Frost, Unholy with Bursting Swords, Demon Hunter with Blade, Dance, as well as Fell Barrage, and for Vengeance, Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb, and for Feral's, Swipe, because majority of the Druid toolkit is already uncapped. For Hunter, your Soulforged Embers Lego, I don't really see a lot of use for it, but still, it does do uncapped AoE. Beast Cleave, Multi-Shot, Barrage, same thing for Marksman but with Explosive Shot instead of Beast Cleave, and for Survival, Carve, and Butchery. For Mages, Arcane Echo and Frozen Orb and Glacial Fragments Lego, since majority of mage abilities are already uncapped. For Monks, it's Russian Jade one for both Brew and Windwalker, with Fist of Fury finally kind of unlocked. Retribution Paladin are seeing Divine Storm cleaving everybody down. For Rogues, we're seeing Assass with Phantom Knives and Crimson Tempest, Subtlety with Black Powder, Shuriken Storm, and Secret Technique, and Outlaw with Nothing, which normally Outlaw is the AoE spec of Rogues, but I guess we got forgotten. For Shamans, most of their ability or majority for both Enhanced and Elite are basically uncapped, but Storm Elementals, Eye of the Storm wasn't. Same thing for Warlock, Demonology, Felguard's Fellstorm, and Warriors, Whirlwind, Bladestorm, Cleave, Ravager, Dreadnought for every single spec of that class. This is quite a lot of abilities getting uncapped in AoE, which I think is a good change overall. I think the more abilities we can get uncapped, the better. I understand the reason why Blizzard wanted to cap it, and in a sense it did create some sort of a balance in Mythic Pluses. It wasn't like BFA anymore, where you just brought double Outlaw Rogue with a Windwalker Monk and just had the biggest amount of AoE damage, because certain classes AoE were just way better because of the defenses and the utility they brought, plus the AoE damage. I mean, it was a full package. So trying to divide that package a little bit amongst classes and make only some of them unique was a novel idea, but most players are still going to end up running with a massive trash pack and biggest AoE pools. And for the rest of the players that aren't into Mythic Pluses to go for really giga high keys, doing older content is very annoying with the AoE caps and can be quite tedious. So we actually talked about on stream suggesting what if they just had tapered off damage beyond their preferred number, and that's exactly what they ended up doing, which potentially could be a really good change. And I don't think this list is final. I'm sure there's other abilities that you guys might mention in the comments down below that could also be taken off of the AoE cap. Then we got class changes. These are only few new class changes. This isn't the final list, this is just the first pass, and there's going to be many more like it on PTR. Starting off with the Death Knights, Shackle the Unworthy Curing ability is getting reduced in damage slightly, but has a 100% chance to jump to other enemies, so it should be a little bit better for AoE. Withering Ground and Impenetrable Doom conduits are getting beefed up quite a bit, and Deliberating Malady conduit is getting increased heavily for Blood Death Knight. Although it's really difficult to say if the 600% damage or value increase is going to be enough, since that is the worst conduit by far. For Demon Hunter, we're seeing Sinful Brand Covenant Venthyr ability reduced down to a 45-second CD rather than a minute. Blind Faith Kyrian Rune Carving Legendary ability will now instead grant them versatility instead of mastery, and lesser soul fragments for Havoc Demon Hunters will also apply towards that effect. And Havoc Dancing with Fate Conduit also has been increased by 650%. For Druids, we're seeing 4 new travel form appearances. As soon as they're on PTR, we'll take a look at them. Well-Honed Instincts Conduit is now categorized for all specs instead of Guardian, so nothing changed there. Adaptive Swarm is going to be a little bit more adaptive in gameplay. It will now have a larger range to jump to enemies and allies with 50 yards rather than 25, and will now jump from friendly target to friendly target if there's no enemy nearby. For Hunters, and I'm going to butcher it completely, Aquilons, Corpse Flies, and Grommets are not tameable as pets, and the Flayshot Venthyr ability will now deal initial damage, and that initial hit has a 15% chance to activate Killshot immediately. For mages, so far in the Necrolord Covenant, we've seen a buff to Gift of the Lich to have its effect increased by 100%. For monks, Way of the Fae Conduit for Night Fae has been also increased by 100%. For paladins, Righteous Might Necrolord Conduit for the Necrolord Covenant, damage is increased by 400%, but the healing is not quite so. And Blessing of Seasons Night Fae ability. During Blessing of Spring, the healing done on the target that gets the blessing is increased by 15% instead of 10, healing received by 30 instead of 20, and Blessing of Winter now reduces hostile targets' attack speed by 5% per stack, and its damage has been increased by 40%, which hopefully will make the Blessing of Seasons a little bit more of a rivaled ability, but more tuning might still need to come. For Priest, we're seeing Festering Transfusion Conduit increased by 100%, with Holy Priest, Holy Star damage increased, as well as for Disc Priest, together with Contrition, heal increased by 15%. Shadow Covenant getting buffed up a little bit. Shadow Priest Surrender to Madness will have a slightly longer duration, with Psychic Link getting buffed up by 10%, so Mind Blast has a bit more of a cleave to it. For Rogues, for now, we're just seeing Septic Shock Conduit for Night Fae increased by 50%. For Shamans, the Kyrian Conduit Elysian Dirge effect is increased by 50% for now as well. For Warlock, the Venthyr ability Impending Catastrophe, Chaos Anima will now be a little bit wider, and its periodic damage should be more consistent. Decimating Bolt will have a slightly shorter cast time, and Skyrim Tide ability instant proc and periodic damage increased by 20% and with a shorter cast time. Languishing Soul Detritus, the Kyrian Legendary Covenant ability, the crit chance from Skyrim Tithe falling off of a dead target is going to be increased to 45% instead of 40%, but also grants the Warlock 33% movement speed buff, and I guess whenever Skyrim Tithe expires before the enemy dies, it'll also apply a 15% crit strike baseline, which I think would potentially be a really good legendary for Destruction Warlocks with Havoc on adds and bosses. For Warriors, we're seeing a slight buff to the Harrowing Punishment Venthyr Conduit. We are seeing Arms Merciless Bone Grinder Conduit increased in value. For Fury Hack and Slash Conduit buffed, and for Protection, Sinful Surge Venthyr Legendary is actually going to buff up the duration of your avatar instead of one of your defensives. This is by no means the final class list and class buffs for 9.1.5. This is just the first one available for, looks like, this testing cycle of PTR, and there's most likely going to be a lot more to come for both PvE as well as PvP. Next, we got an update for dungeons and raids. Legion Timewalking is actually going to be a thing, and it looks like we have Legion Mythic Pluses, more information about how relevant will the gear be and how will the affixes play. So for the Mythic Plus dungeons and Legion Timewalking dungeons from Legion that are getting added, you're going to have Blackrock Hold, Eye of Ajara, Darkheart Thicket, Vault of the Wardens, Neltharion's Lair, and the Court of Stars. This isn't a full list of some of the Mythic Plus dungeons from Legion, and I think a lot of players would have wished for like Karazhan to return in some feature, and maybe in the future they'll add more dungeons at some point, but for now this is the current list available. Mythic Plus version of these Time Walkings will be active, and you can talk to an NPC in Oribos to acquire a Time-Worn Keystone, allowing max level players to do Mythic Plus difficulty for the 6 Legion dungeons. Legion and Plus dungeons access this way will have their own set of affixes, which I wonder if they'll have some of the Legion affixes from back in the day, and they'll reward loot of the same level as Shadowlands Mythic Plus dungeons, and count towards the Great Vault weekly. Also, the items acquired from Legion and Plus dungeons can be upgraded with Valor points, but will not appear in your Great Vault. This is crazy because you got some trinkets, you got some weapons, you got some certain unique items from those Legion dungeons that could potentially become the meta things you will need for the next raid. Like Court of Stars, I believe that had an auto attack ring. An auto attack ring. Do you know how many melees would kill for that? And if you can actually have that at what, 240 or so item level in the current raid, that'll be insane. I'm actually surprised they're allowing you to upgrade these pieces. Maybe they'll end up diminishing the quality of that gear heavily so it doesn't become your best in slots, and potentially they'll try to make your best in slots from your common regular dungeons or maybe from your raids for PvE content. But the fact that they're letting you upgrade that gear and it's actually going to be on the same item level as your current M pluses, this is going to be really exciting time walking, as well as an exciting aspect for Mythic Plus for us to explore going into 9.1.5. Now let's switch gears, and instead of talking about PvE, let's talk about PvP. For Honor gear, all they said is lower item level PvP gear will now scale to a higher item level in PvP scenarios, so that it should be more competitive. This change in particular will not affect the high item level PvP gear, I think meaning Conquest gear. Additionally, they're adding PvP titles with more gaps in between, and titles and item level ranks have been adjusted to provide a more granular upgrade for path for players when it comes to climbing ranks. What you're seeing is the lowest end of Conquest gear, which means no rating acquired in arenas at all, will start off at item level 220, and as you climb rating bit by bit, you also get upgrades of that gear with different ranks in between. At 1000, which is the rating where you can't lose any CR at all, even if you lose, you can get up to Combatant rank 1 with 223 item level, and then at 1200, Combatant rank 2 at 226. Then it's Challenger rank 1 at 1400 at 229, and Challenger rank 2 at 233. Climbing towards Rival at 1800, you will see 236 item level gear, and when you climb towards 1950 at Rival 2, you'll see 239 item level. From there, reaching 2100 will reward 242 gear, and then 2400 will reward you 246 item level. So now there's more gaps in between the item level, which hopefully will allow players to have a little bit more of a gradual gear increase. And again, the difference between the highest potential item level and the lowest is about 20 item level, which the gaps in between are a little smaller. And a player, I guess, on a good week can climb to like 1600 to 1800. Almost make it to 2k, but kind of standing at 1950, and this way they're able to get the necessary gear in order to hopefully make that next climb to higher item level a little bit easier. This is a very interesting change. I am very interested to see what it's going to be like for Conquest gear, the acquisition, the upgrade methods, which probably will be the same, but also I want to see just how good competitive Honor gear could be in terms of getting into that arena. It looks like they definitely put a lot of time and effort into the Conquest side of the game, where you're climbing for rating, to get players to want to climb rating, to give you different gaps and breaks in between of that ladder climb so you can gain some sort of reward, upgrade your gear and item level. But I am also very interested to see just how competitive that Honor gear is going to be. I want to make a separate video on the PvP side of things once I get to test some more PvP stuff over on PTR, once it's actually available. But this is an interesting change, and I wonder where it'll go. Next, we have the legendary side of things, where you will be able to recraft or recycle your legendary. The rune crafter will now offer to destroy an existing legendary item and return all of the soul ash and soul cinders that were spent to create that item. Doesn't mean that you will be able to get the missives, and it also doesn't sound like you'll be able to get the actual item, the ones you had to buy from the auction house, in order to recraft that legendary. However, at least on my server, which is Illidan, the prices for those have plummeted, going from around, what, 300,000 gold to like 40,000, which still for some players is going to be a bit of gold to grind, but it's a lot better prices. I mean, at least on my server, the prices skyrocketed downwards. This is PTR, so potentially Blizzard maybe could allow players to gain the item back, so then they don't completely lose it, because not only do you invest the time inside of Torghast in order to get the soul ash and cinders, but also the funds in order to be able to get that legendary item. So it would be nice if at least they refund you back the item, so you have a little bit more of a headway in terms of what legendary you want to craft. Also, the drop rates for all the legendaries that drop from dungeons are increased to 100% drop rate, whether you do them on normal, heroic, or mythic difficulties. We also get some changes to questing, primarily with Threads of Fate. With Threads of Fate's Tal Inara now offers Torghast, Tower of the Damned daily quest for experience and soul ash. So as you quest, now you'll have a couple dailies to do for bonus XP. There's even a daily for a PvP battleground. But even if you're someone who isn't really into PvP or Torghast, the bonus objectives will now be significantly shorter in terms of filling up the bar, thank goodness, and will reward renown. While also the zone objectives will now reward higher item level gear and anima, so you're able to catch up with your questing and maybe not come out completely dirt item level by the end of your run. We also got group finder improvements and UI improvements. Updated requirements to participate to the newcomer guide system. I don't really know that many people that utilize this. Improved gamepad compatibility, which is all good. Mythic Plus and PvP ratings can now be shared through chat link and shift link, which is interesting. And item upgrade UI has been reworked, whatever that means. For group finder improvements, search now allows numeric range from Mythic Plus keys. So if you're looking between 5 and 9, you can actually just type in 5-9. You can also autofill group finder information based on creator's keystone. Group creators can now set a minimum Mythic Plus and PvP rating requirement for application, which could be perceived as kind of toxic. But let's say if you're a serious push group or someone who's seriously looking to push arenas, you really want to play with somebody in your level bracket, or rather CR bracket. So I guess it kind of makes sense from that angle. And group creators can now select a playstyle to set expectations for their group. I'm not really sure playstyle. Does that mean like a hardcore playstyle, or like more a casual, relaxed environment? Or is this like, I want a subtlety rogue for my dungeon group, so please sign up if you only your subtlety? Who knows? Continuing on, we have reports will now receive a message when the report results in an action being taken. So let's say you report somebody for doing something bad, or maybe just advertising in LFG. Now you'll know when something happens to them. Offenders will receive a message if any current or future penalties of their behavior is not corrected. So it looks like they'll force players to correct the behavior, and if they don't, messages will keep popping up on their screen. I am interested to see if this whole report system and the offender system will end up changing any kind of bad behavior from certain players. I am actually legit interested to see if this will have any effect at all. I wonder if there'll be any actual valuable way to test this on PTR. I guess if you just didn't tell people that there's a new report system and just kind of let them do their thing on PTR, eventually some bad apples will get reported, and I guess we'll be able to see if the system does anything at all. Now, this was a lot to go through. This is a pretty big blue post, and hopefully by the time this video is out, the PTR will be available, which will probably be streaming it on this channel as soon as it's up. I'm very excited to see some of the different class changes, the customization changes, test everything out. This is also not the first blue post, not the last. We'll probably get a lot more additions and changes for it, as we'll get a lot more class updates, maybe even PvP changes, scaling, balance tuning, whatever it be. But this is an interesting first step, and there's quite a lot going into the patch 9.1.5. I'm very excited, legitimately excited. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about everything we took a look at so far and talked about in the comments. Hit us up on Discord, link down below. You guys are more than welcome to join the community. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more regular 9.1.5 updates, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.